Greetings. Dan Larson here. This is Quiet Echo for Friday, January 9th, 2026. The right to wind in your hair. I'm out on the porch. Sun's just coming up. Got my cocoa, got my blanket, and I've got a story I've been carrying around all week. Sometimes a story just stays with you. This one's about a bicycle and a 97-year-old woman. And what happens when someone decides that another person's dignity is worth a little effort. His name is John Sagelboatner. He's 70 years old, retired middle school teacher in Santa Barbara, California. Twice a week, he climbs onto a three-wheeled bicycle, they call it a Trishoan, pedals through the streets of his city with an elderly woman named Elizabeth Wright seated up front. She's 97, a blanket across her lap, her thin hands knotted with age, a straw hat over her white hair. And as they roll through downtown, past the palm trees and the ocean, she waves at everyone they pass. Joggers wave back. Toddlers stop and stare. Strangers smile. And Elizabeth Wright, who lives in a nursing home, who might otherwise spend her days inside four walls, is alive in the world again. The program is called Cycling Without Age. It started in Copenhagen back in 2012, when a man named Ole Casso borrowed a rickshaw and offered an elderly gentleman from a care home a simple ride, one act of kindness. That single gesture has now spread to 600 chapters in 41 countries, 50,000 volunteers worldwide, all of them doing the same thing, taking people who can no longer get around on their own and giving them back the world. A visually impaired passenger once called it the right to wind in your hair. The right to wind in your hair. We don't usually think of that as a right. We think of rights as legal things, constitutional things, things we argue about in courtrooms. But there's another kind of right. The right to dignity. The right to be seen. The right to feel the sun on your face and watch the world go by, even when your body can no longer carry you there on its own. Elizabeth Wright has been riding with John for years. As they pedal along the coast, she points out the pub where she once bartended. She remembers her birthday picnic on the beach. She waves at her favorite street musician. The Trishaw becomes a kind of time machine, not backward, but outward. She's reconnecting with her own story, with the city she helped build, with the life she lived before her world shrank to the size of a room. Ole Casso, the man who started all this, says something that stuck with me. He says, elderly people come into a nursing home and their world gets smaller and smaller until they just sit inside within their four walls. The Trishaw opens those walls. John Sagelboatner was asked why he does this, why he spends his retirement peddling nursing home residents through the streets. His answer was simple. We're put on this earth to be of service. Not only that, service feels good. That's the gospel, isn't it? Stripped of all the theology and doctrine, that's what Jesus was always trying to teach us. Serve one another, wash one another's feet. The last shall be first. The greatest among you shall be your servant. John doesn't call his riders passengers. He calls them riding partners. The distinction matters. A passenger is cargo, a partner is a companion. And companionship, real presence, real attention is what loneliness steals and what service restores. Here's something else John does. At least once a week, he pairs a middle schooler with a senior for a ride together. A teenager and an elderly stranger, side by side on a Trishaw, rolling through the streets. They talk about life, about music, about what's changed and what hasn't. John says, the bike isn't the end. The bike is the means to see the world from the riding partner's perspective, across generations, across the gulf that separates the young from the old, the healthy from the frail. A simple bicycle becomes a bridge. I think about our own community, the seniors in our churches who used to be at every potluck and now rarely leave their homes, the widowers who haven't smiled since they buried their wives, the retired teachers and farmers whose stories are disappearing because no one thinks to ask. We don't all have Trishaws, but we all have time. We all have attention. We all have the capacity to show up, to listen, to say, you matter. Your story matters. Come outside with me. John says something else that stayed with me. He says, I've ridden through downtown Santa Barbara 5 million times, but with Elizabeth, it was completely new. That's what service does. It doesn't just change the person being served, it changes the one who serves. It opens your eyes. It makes the familiar strange and beautiful again. It reminds you that you're not the center of the story. And honestly, that's a relief. The burden of being the main character is heavy. Service sets it down. Elizabeth Wright, 97 years old, a blanket tucked close in the morning breeze, the ocean glinting ahead. "This is where I bartended," she says with a grin, and for a moment, decades collapse. The world is wide open. The wind is in her hair. That's not a program. That's not a policy. That's just one person deciding that another person's dignity matters enough to get on a bicycle and pedal. It's Friday morning. The weekend is ahead. Somewhere in your town, someone is sitting inside four walls, waiting for the world to remember they exist. Maybe you're the one who can open the door. Quiet Echo is part of the Cedar Valley News series. The people in town are fictional, but the story we reflected on today is real. You can learn more about cycling without age at cyclingwithoutage.org. If you want to know how Cedar Valley came together, how a small town found its way from fear to fellowship, pick up Quiet Echo. When loud voices divide, quiet ones bring together. It's where Teresa, Lars, Chloe, and I first learned that sometimes the quietest acts of service are the ones that change everything. Available on Amazon. Links in the show notes.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open.